Hi everyone and welcome to our presentation. I'm Associate Professor Christine Robinson from Edith Cowan University in Western Australia, and I'm presenting alongside my colleagues today, Dr. Brendan Hyde from Deakin University in Victoria and Professor Megan Best from the University of Notre Dame, Australia, out of the Institute for Ethics and Society on the Sydney campus. And our presentation today is focused on research that we've undertaken together that has resulted in designing and developing a framework for young children's spiritual capabilities, which you can see on the left of the screen there. Here's the abstract, if you'd like to refer to that, which just details the main points of our presentation today. So Brendan, Megan and I have all actually researched in spirituality before coming together to collaborate on this project. And we've all worked in slightly different areas in our interest within this topic. So I have come to work in children's spirituality, mostly focused on the way educators who work in early childhood as teachers, how they understand spirituality for themselves. And then I've also been really interested in how they might promote or nurture the spirituality of the children they teach. And I've looked at that in connection to religion, so in Catholic contexts. And I've also been really interested in how that is promoted in more secular contexts. And that has led me into looking at different ways that might happen. So wonder, and I've written papers on that, play, and then in relation to religion. So I'll just hand over to Brendan first and then Megan just to speak about their individual research.
Thanks, Christine. I've been around for a long time, which is almost a bit scary now, over 20 years as it so turns out. But my focus initially was looking at children's spirituality in the primary school context or the elementary school context. That's where I originally came from. But over the years, I've drifted down and I've dabbled in the early childhood space, particularly looking at godly play and how that particular approach might nurture children's spirituality. And then more recently, I've been looking at children's spiritual voice and the notion of how do we protect or how do we nurture children's spirituality with all of the neoliberal school reform agendas that are happening in all different places in the world. I'll hand over to Megan.
Thank you, Brendan. My background is as a clinician in palliative care. So I'm a palliative care doctor, and it was observing the importance of spirituality in the lives of my patients at the end of life that got me started in the research space. And I now have an extensive research program looking at the role of spirituality and spiritual care in healthcare, particularly at the end of life, including in children and their families. And as a result of that, I've also been involved in the development of spiritual care programs for non-chaplains to improve the ability of people in the healthcare space to recognise when spiritual care is needed. And I'm now branching out into spirituality in other contexts, but over time just becoming increasingly convinced of the importance of nurturing spiritual well-being across the community. Thank you.
Thanks, Brendan and Megan. So as you can see from slightly different perspectives of spirituality, we have this shared interest in how this works across life and in this particular study that we present today, particularly in early childhood. So as a collaboration, we started to recognise that there was this gap that existed, and we had an opportunity here to create something that could be really usable and accessible for professionals who are working with young children in regards to spirituality. So that's how we came about a starting point, which was the systematic review and qualitative synthesis of the literature. And we wanted that to focus really on what research had already provided to us around the experience and expression of spirituality so that we could then have our starting point. And some common themes that emerged from that review were around the role of connectedness with spirituality, the importance of wonder, opportunities for children to naturally engage in wonder, how spirituality was connected to identity, to meaning and purpose in life, and to creativities. to creativity. And so you'll see how later these found their way into the framework that we developed. In addition, we also found really clearly that existing research tells us in most instances, those who are promoting or nurturing spirituality, so in this instance, teachers or educators, they go about that in the way that they themselves experience it. So it becomes tied really personally to the person who's giving that support or nurturance. So we knew then that a framework was needed to assist educators in broadening the way that they nurtured children's spirituality. It was also really clear that there's no working definition, particularly in education, and so we looked to try and find ways to provide a more descriptive working definition for spirituality, and we've done that also in this framework. We were then really fortunate to partner with Mercy Care, which is a non-for-profit provider of early learning. They have about 15 centres across Australia, and they helped fund a small-scale project where we could speak with educators about how they understood spirituality and then what they thought they were doing to nurture it in the children in their care who were from birth to 5 years of age. We interviewed the educators, we took observations of their practice, and we hope to soon share some findings from that particular study, but we were able to use what we found out from that again to inform our framework. The framework itself then, the structure of that became really clear for us in how that systematic literature review presented those key themes in the way that spirituality might be nurtured. And then along with a focus on early childhood pedagogy and practice, it really became a way of how we could provide this framework for educators that we knew they could pick up and read easily and use without being a textbook or a heavy research book where, we knew they weren't going to necessarily sit and read that from front to back. So we knew it had to provide practical strategies, but it also had to provide research-informed evidence for educators so they could understand the value and importance of what they were doing. We also knew that taking an early childhood perspective meant making sure we centralised the agency of the child as being capable and contributing, co-constructing their learning and development. And so a capability approach really sat well and aligned with other practices and pedagogies happening in early childhood. So it was a child-centred approach, and that led to having 3 sections in the framework. The first section, what is spirituality, where we provide some research background as to understanding that term and trying to really broaden the educator's understanding of spirituality and align it with the early years learning framework, which is a mandated Australian document for that setting, and to holistic approaches. And then we moved into a section on capabilities, and we came up with 9 capabilities in total. Brendan will speak to that a little bit more. And then we had a final section which was around spirituality as a protective factor, which Megan will speak to. And on the slide there, you can see within each of the capabilities, they were also broken down. And I'll hand over to Brendan now to speak about that. Thanks, Brendan.
Thanks, Christine. So, as Christine said, accessibility was a key here. So looking at the ways in which early childhood educators might be able to pick up this document and use it in a way that was accessible and in a way that inspired their own imaginations. Can you just move on to the next slide, Christine? That's better, thank you. So here are just 2 examples of the 9 that Christine spoke about. So each of the capabilities is framed from the perspective of the child. So the first one that's there on the left, I can connect with the world. And in the second capability on the right-hand side, I have agency and autonomy. The good thing about this is that each of the capabilities takes 1 page in total. So it becomes accessible, it's not difficult to look at, and hopefully inspires the imagination a little bit. So for each of those capabilities in the example here, there is a section that indicates how that capability is informed by research, and it's a very accessible low-level kind of statement that's there. It's not meant to be an academic paper. It's meant to be something that is accessible. The educator can look at it and read it and get a feel for what that capability is about. Then there is the capability in action. So from birth to 3 years of age, children of birth to 3 years of age, and some examples in bullet point form. And then again for children from the ages of 4 through to 8, which is birth to 8 in Australia at least is what we frame early childhood as. And it varies a little bit in other places in the world. I'm very aware of that. So there are some examples of what that capability might look like in action. So for example, in the first one that's there, I am part of the world, we have things like include nature materials for indoor play, natural materials for indoor play, spend time outdoors engaging in nature play experiences, and so on. Then at the bottom of each of the capabilities, there's a little statement that concerns the role of the educator. So how does the educator promote or enable this capability to come to the fore in the children in their care? There are 9 of them altogether. 2 of them are on this slide as an example. I'm not going to read every single thing that's there, but you get a feel for it. It's accessible. It's something that an educator could pick up and they could use. And hopefully it's something that will inspire the imagination so that in reading some of those capabilities in action, it may lead the educator to think of other things or extensions or better ways of framing that capability or of putting it into action in their own practice. Thanks, Christine.
Why do we focus on children's spirituality? Well, at any age, our spiritual self comprises a web of relationships which stabilize and orientate us to the world and provide the basis for the way in which we negotiate change. There's now a wealth of research identifying benefits associated with high spiritual well-being. When children's spirituality is nurtured, children have a growing ability to understand their own needs in relation to feeling connected and in learning how to engage in moments of reflection and silence, respect for the natural world and their place in it. And importantly, children have the ability to develop resilience. All of these attributes are connected to human flourishing. Research is clear that children who feel safe and secure thrive. Children feel safe and secure when they feel listened to, have their immediate needs met, and have strong attachments to their caregivers. When professionals respond to children's big questions about meaning and purpose in life, when they offer strategies for overcoming fear and worry, and present opportunities for wonder, joy, contemplation, and the arts, these all attend to children's well-being in the moment. Next slide, please. However, of perhaps greatest significance is the way these moments combine over the period of development to culminate in improved lifelong health outcomes. A brief summary of some of the outcomes of high levels of spiritual well-being can be seen on this slide. They include improved mental health outcomes, including lower levels of depression and anxiety, prevention of substance abuse and suicide, and improved counselling outcomes. And there are also many benefits in physical health, such as prevention of heart disease and hypertension, improved cancer outcomes, and faster recovery from surgery. High spiritual well-being is known to improve quality of life. It helps us adjust to hardship and change circumstances and to cope better when times are tough. Investment in the spiritual capacity of children and a better understanding of the ways in which children's spirituality is experienced and expressed is essential, as spirituality acts as a protective factor for children in terms of growing resilience and managing future trauma. Thank you, Christine.
So as you can see, the framework clearly emanates out of the research of the three of us over a number of years, but also drawing on the scholarship more broadly. So we're really proud of this because it's not just something we kind of thought up overnight. A lot of work has gone into it, but it's clearly grounded in research, and we offer it to you as in the hope that it might sit alongside your practice, that you might use it within your practice, that perhaps some of you in the university settings may use it with your students, but importantly that it doesn't sit on the shelf, it actually acts as a framework that informs our practice in moving forward. If you want to copy a purchase of the book, it is available through Amazon. We did have a QR code that doesn't seem to want to work anymore. So what we have done is we've put our email addresses at the bottom of this slide. Very happy for you to contact any one of us and we can arrange for a copy of the book. But if you Google Amazon and Google the name of the book, it will probably come up on Amazon for you in your own country and in your own currency. And that might be an easier way to do it. But we certainly commend this to you, and we're very pleased to be able to talk about this framework today. So thank you very much for listening. Christine, I'll hand over to you for any last words.
Just to say thank you to everyone, and we look forward to